Okay, you got somebody.
Over the average age over here.
Gotta go find my friend out presentation.
Hello. Hi, everyone. We're going to start New Mexico on time, so in about 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, you ready? Okay.
If everyone could come in and grab a seat, we'll get started. Come on in, make a new friend, find an empty seat. Okay, welcome everybody. If I could get your attention over here, we're going to get started. I'm going to turn things over to the mayor to kick it off.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to our village of Los Ranchos. I appreciate each and every one of you showing up tonight. Thank you. It's a busy night, however, to discuss important decisions that could have an impact on the village for years to come. I really appreciate the turnout tonight. We've seen a lot of changes in our little village, but I believe that we are moving in a positive direction. Your participation is helping. I believe that we share the same goal of preserving what's unique and special about Los Ranchos: our green space, our vistas, our acequias, our land. This sentiment was shared by those who worked on the 2035 master plan and who ultimately recommended our pilot conservation ordinance. Remember, ordinances are living documents, and we look forward to making improvements that will help implement the goals of the master plan and adhere most closely with that of the community. So tonight, we welcome your opinions. Thank you for participating and for making your voices heard. This is democracy. It is difficult, but so very important. Thanks again, and I hope we have a great session. Thank you, Maida.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Maida Rubin. I'm the Planning and Zoning Director here at the Village of Los Ranchos. I'd like to second what the mayor said. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming out and participating. We're really excited to get more input on this. You're going to hear me say the CAC. And so before I say that without explaining who these wonderful folks are, this is the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a little bit, but if I could have them stand up and wave hello, just say hello, yes. So these are our Citizens Advisory Committee members who are here tonight and a couple who couldn't join us. They will be helping facilitate our table discussions. So they will be around. If you have any questions on stuff we've been doing to date, they have been around for it. Some housekeeping, bathrooms in the lobby. There are less printed materials than people in the room you will find at your tables. There are a couple extra sets of agendas and maps, but sharing is caring, and we're trying to save a tree, so feel free to share. Also, we are streaming this online. So if anyone is joining online, it is not interactive, it is just streamed. However, if you'd like to provide some comments, please feel free to do so. We'll be taking written comments if you would like to provide them until Monday at 5 p.m., just to have some kind of cutoff time, and we'll include those in all of your comments. So I'm going to briefly go through the agenda. First, Sandy Geiser is here. She's going to give us a brief presentation to give us some background on conservation subdivisions. I know her from being the regional planning manager at the Mid-Region Council of Governments for many years. She's also worked in local government in several communities. So we're really grateful that she could join us tonight to help us out. I'm going to briefly go over some existing conditions and some of the work that the group has done so far. And then we're going to break into table discussions and do little report backs. So we'll try and keep it really organized and get everyone out on time. We have a hard stop at 7:30 because that's when the streaming stops. So we're going to get everyone out of here on time. We'll try and keep everyone on track. A couple ground rules during the table discussions. Talk into the microphone. There is not a microphone everywhere at the tables. We will come to you. Just raise your hand when you want to do the report backs. For the table discussions, no need to do that. But when we do report backs, please wait for the microphone to come to you so we can capture that for the streaming. Also, civil discourse. Our time is really limited, and this is such a great opportunity to gather your input. We really want to make sure that it's a productive use of everyone's time. There are differences of opinion. That's totally fine. We want to note all of those things and take all of that input. So please make sure that we can get that in a streamlined manner. So yeah, just be respectful as much as possible to each other. Okay, with that, I'm going to make the presentation bigger and turn it over to Sandy. Would you like a microphone?
Yes, probably not. I don't usually use a microphone because I can usually project pretty well. Just ask my little dogs. I yell at them all the time. So I'm Sandy Geiser, and as Maida said, I've known Maida and Ann, the mayor, for a few years now, working at the Mid-Region Council of Governments. I retired from there a couple of years ago and started my own planning consulting business. And Los Ranchos, through Ann and Maida, asked me to assist with this conservation subdivision review. So I have a quick presentation. It won't take too long. It's basically to make sure everyone's on the same page and understand what is a conservation district development, cluster development. And one of the things that I've been doing as I did my research is I looked at a lot of, you see that cluster development or conservation subdivision used interchangeably throughout the United States. So you have to kind of, when you're doing your research, you have to kind of query on both of those terms, but they're basically the same. And a lot of the community, there's a lot of these types of mechanisms to conserve areas in communities throughout the United States. It's been around for a long time, and they're all a little bit different. And so you can't take a community's subdivision ordinance and say, this is gonna work for Los Ranchos or any other community. You really gotta, this is why this is important to get your input and make it fit for Los Ranchos. So we can go to the next slide, Mia. So what is conservation cluster development? So it's basically the community wants to protect natural resources. You have agriculture, some sort of a bosque, some natural resource that they feel is important. and instead of using the traditional subdivision process, you put together this conservation subdivision. So it clusters housing into a specified area within a larger portion. And so this mechanism will preserve that open space for agriculture. And it also can implement the community's master plan or comprehensive plan policies for land use. So it's a lot of things to different people. It can be written many different ways, but the main thing is, for example, if you have a 10-acre parcel, you have, if you could put 1-acre lots with 10 houses on that 10 acres, but there's something there, some agriculture, a flyaway migration path that the community wants to conserve, the developer can use the conservation subdivision to cluster those houses, put them on smaller lots, and then you have that open space that is preserved in perpetuity. So the next slide. So background on conservation subdivisions. It's been around quite a while, as I said. Ian McCard, the Design with Nature is a book that was written many, many years ago, in the 60s, 70s. Ian McCard talked about looking at the geography of the land and developing sustainably and smartly to conserve important features of a community. And so Ian McCard talks about it. And then later on, Randall Arndt, in his Rural by Design book, he also went a little bit farther and actually gave mechanisms, draft ordinances to talk about this is how you can do it. You know, this is the open space should be in perpetuity. It should be handled by a homeowners association or some sort of nonprofit, some sort of entity, so it's not split up in the future. If that desire, it's conserved. So that was what Rural by Design talked about, is giving us some more information on that, some real nuts and bolts information. So that's one of the books that I've been going through to look and see what are his caveats on these type of subdivisions. So a typical conservation, the next slide. So typical conservation subdivision standards. I looked at a lot throughout the United States. They're all a little bit different, but these standards that I have are pretty much the same in all of them. They may vary by percentages, open space, language, but a lot of them require at least 50% open space to be conserved. Now, I've seen some communities that go to 35 and go as high as 75%, depending on, in Washington State, they have a 75% open space, but they want to preserve their forest land.
Oregon as well.
Oregon, yes. So those percentages, change by what the community feels is important, what they need to do to get their goals in place. But 50% seems to be, it's kind of the standard throughout the United States. So 50% is what I put on this slide. And of course, open space is owned by a homeowners association and another entity. So it's not being able to be split up. The plat will have that information on there. The plat that is, because you go through the subdivision process, so you have a plat when you get through that will be filed. Yes. Oh, sorry, Ann. I'm not used to using a mic. So, and then a lot of the communities require a management plan for that open space. So what is it going to be used for? Why is this area important and special for the community? So the management plan is part of the planning process as you go through that. And then several of the communities use the existing zoning designations for land densities just as the starting point for how many homes are you allowed on the lot. So if you have a zoning designation that allows 1-acre lots, then once again you can have 10 acres, you can have basically 10 houses under the regular subdivision ordinance. A cluster development, you could do 50%, 5 acres is put into that open space, so you develop the other 5 acres. So you'd end up with basically a half-acre lots or in that area. So that's the rationale behind that, because you have a starting point. Now, I understand that the ordinance you have in place now doesn't do that. It uses the floor to area ratio, but that seems to be consistent with a lot of the ordinances of using the underlying zoning to start. And then, let's see, so, and then the density bonus. A lot of communities, to give the developer that incentive, because they're giving away, 50% of their developable land. So the density bonus is there as the carrot to say, we want this kind of development in our community. We'll give you an extra house, or you can use, instead of 10 lots, you can do 12 or something like that. So that's how that works. Not all communities use the density bonus. Some communities say, this is what you're getting, you have to, this is your minimum lot sizes. It just depends on what the community wants to do. So the density bonus is, it can be a good mechanism if it's, you're very clear on what you're gonna get in the end. So the next slide, Maida. So I looked a little bit at the advantages and disadvantages of conservation development. Because there are a lot of advantages, but there's also some disadvantages that need to be considered. So it does provide the habitat for wildlife. It can reduce storm water runoff, and it conserves the natural features of a site. It can create a sense of openness. It can reduce the cost of site development. So if you have your homes clustered closer together, the developer is not spending a lot more money extending that road 500 feet into that subdivision, or running in the sewer connections and water connections. So it is a savings can be savings for the developer. And it can reinforce the policy of maintaining your local character, which I think is important in Los Ranchos. The disadvantages, it is a little more complicated than your traditional subdivision ordinance. The subdivision ordinance is pretty much standard in the state of New Mexico. State statutes dictates how it works. And this is a little more, gives the developer and the community a little more flexibility, but it is a little more complex. So it is going to take a little more time to review it and make sure it's done right. So staff time is going to be dedicated more than just a regular subdivision. And then the local developers and officials, they may prefer the traditional methods of subdividing, and that's we've talked to a lot of developers, and they like to be able to just go in and pull their application, get their engineers to drop the regular traditional subdivision, maximize the space, or get as many houses as they can on that parcel, and they go through the process and they're good, and they move on to the next development. This takes a little more time. It's going to take a little more education of the community and the developers and the staff if you're going to decide to do that. So I've put together a few examples, if you want to go to the next slide, of what a conservation subdivision looks like as opposed to a conventional. The top is a conventional with, as you can see, the lots, the houses are spread out throughout the parcel. In the bottom one, the conservation subdivision, it's more concentrated, and you do have the open space. And it has the same number of housing. So this development did not have a density bonus, but you can see it's a lot different configuration. It looks different, and it will feel different when you're on the ground. And it reduces the amount of infrastructure, and it does give you that flexibility. And I have one more slide, I believe, Maida. So this is another example of a conservation, the clustered houses, a large open space, and then reduce infrastructure costs. So that's really all I have generally on conservation districts. And Maida's going to go into more detailed analysis of what's been going on, if she can get her find her presentation, which she had up just a minute ago. Did you have any questions while she's pulling up her presentation? Oh, yes, sir.
I have a question for Mayor Lopez.
Yes, I'm happy to answer.
I wonder how this conservation issue arose early last year, and how it was handled.
Well, here's the answer, and let me stand and give that answer.
I'm going to give you the mic.
There were 4 trustees 2 trustees who are no longer on the board, trustee Riccabini, trustee Rael. We now have trustee Gilbert Benavides and trustee Radnovich. The prior administration had those 4 trustees, and they believed that the master plan was the basis of doing it. There were a number of meetings, not as many people as this showed up for those meetings, so basically that's why we're doing this today. That's the best answer I can give you, sir.
Oh, wait, did you find it, Beta? No. Okay, keep going. We'll just keep going around the room. Excuse me. Well, we all want to hear what you have to say.
Don Bradley, I live somewhere in the village. I just want to know if it affects anybody with less than 2 acres, or if I could finagle the rules and play games with this proposed rules that I read through. Because you can Google cluster, you can find all kinds of positive things, you can find negative things, but I want this to be a positive meeting, and I came just for the small guy.
Okay,
We
well,
aren't gonna try to apply this to like less than 2 acres.
and that's the question that's on. Do you want to answer that? Answer?
The committee is, the intent of this meeting is to get input on all of the issues regarding conservation development. So we'll be asking, and you can see in your packets, there are questions that you'll go through as little tables to give your input on the various topics, okay? So we're not making decisions here. We're gathering resident input, which is very important right now at this stage of the game.
Thank you. Any other questions?
It's giving me trouble, but I can go on without it.
Okay, Maida, I'm going to turn it back over to Maida.
Just picture pretty pictures. Okay. So again, my name is Maida Rubin. I'm going to talk just a little bit about conservation subdivisions from the village's perspective. So existing conditions, the Citizens Advisory Committee work done so far on this project. We've done a little research. We've tried to come with a little homework for you. So I'll talk about the existing ordinance, the group that we've formed, the CAC, the work we've done so far, existing conditions analysis a little bit, and then we'll jump into our breakout groups. I lied, I had no pretty pictures, so this is fine. Okay, so first of all, I have to bring it back to the master plan. This is what informs our work as planners. One of the residential development goals, in fact, the residential development goal is to sustain the village as a semi-rural, multi-generational community through residential development in keeping with village scale and character, in particular, the agricultural, historic, and open expanses characteristics of the village. So again, this is what informed the development of the ordinance that is with us today, and it is what should continue to inform our conversation tonight. Some quick highlights of the existing ordinances for those of you who haven't delved right in there and read it yourself. I'll make it a little easier for you. So eligibility, and these are some of the factors that we have looked at as a group to consider all of these variables that could change that would inform how the ordinance is written. So eligibility, currently there are up to 3 pilot projects that are allowed within only the Guadalupe Trail and the 4th Street character areas. The minimum lot size would be thrice the net minimum, emphasis on hard for staff, thrice the net minimum of lot size for the underlying zone. So that actually gives you, based on what you could do in that zone, triple that lot size and then you are eligible. But it could happen in any zone. The built footprint. Any questions? Thrice, 3 times.
What does that mean?
So, sure, thank you very much for the question. So, and we'll talk a whole lot more with diagrams, I promise. Basically, if your minimum lot size is 1 acre, you need to be 3 acres or more to be eligible for this pilot project, as written currently. Does that answer the question? Thank you. Yeah, stop me and ask me to clarify if you have additional questions. The footprint, so consistent with the way we do our zoning and residential development now, this follows the 20% floor area ratio. So what that means is, roughly speaking, you can develop 20% of the lot, preserving 60% permeable surface, generally. Dedicated open space. Sorry?
20 plus 60 equals 100?
Oh, sorry. No, it does not. But you preserve, well, there are a lot of things that aren't structures that are not permeable. Yes, there is some wiggle room, correct. Dedicated open space. So the minimum size required right now for dedicated open space is 30% the net acreage. So that is minus access easements, so unpaved roads going to the development. For each 10% of additional dedicated land, the conservation development may add 5% in allowable FAR, floor area ratio, to build on. So a little density for a little more open space being preserved, as written currently.
What does it mean when you say less the infrastructure? What does that mean?
Sure. So the question was, what is less the infrastructure? So for access easements, that would be something that could be built in the 30% of open space. So rather than 30% of open space with absolutely nothing on it, the access to the development could be through that area.
So a road into the area counts as part of the open space, basically.
Correct. And again, these are the variables we're going to be asking you guys about. It's, yeah, the devil is in the details, as you will find out. So, a couple more things. The uses that are allowed for the conserved open space: agricultural, recreation, and/or conservation use. So for habitat, for example. Location is the last one. May be comprised of one or more areas. At least one area must be exterior to the development, so probably abutting the main road so it's viewable by the public. Where you choose to conserve is also something that can be written into this. So, yes?
I did research on this and it matched up with what you had.
Wait, hang on one moment. I'll be better about the microphone.
I did research as you did, and I think our notes match up where it said the open space was measured in gross acreage, not the net. So by doing the net, you end up even with a smaller percentage. So if you use 50%, it's really going to be less than 50% versus 50% of the gross.
Depending on how it's written.
But everything I've read says it's on 50% of the gross, and if I take 50% of the net and the net keeps getting smaller, then you're going to have something much smaller than 50%.
Sorry? That is in the current ordinance. Again, everything I just said is what is in the current ordinance. So, upon which there is a moratorium, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. Yes. So, I'm going to move on because we'll have a lot more time to discuss. Okay, so the Citizens Advisory Committee. So there were 2 things that came out of the September 8th, 2022 public meeting that we had, 2 main ones. And that is that there was a call for more citizen participation and a reexamination of housing density uses in the C1, VC, and VC zones, as well as a review of the pilot conservation ordinance. So the group that formed, that was appointed by Mayor Lopez in response to this meeting, was the Citizens Advisory Committee meetings that we're still having. So that group had worked a little bit on the C1 ordinance, the chapter on commercial development in our code, and those changes had actually already gone through and been passed by the Board of Trustees, so those are adopted. These were kind of to, very briefly, just reduce the height and density a little bit of residential development within the C1 zone. So now we are talking about the conservation subdivision ordinance, and we've been meeting every 2 weeks for approximately 2.5 months discussing this topic, talking about the goals of the ordinance, research on the existing conditions in the village, and meeting with developers and other subject matter experts just to get a little more background. And just to call out all of the committee members real quick, raise your hand when call on you. Robert Chavez is our chair. Gilbert Benavides, our trustee, is on the committee. Sarah Cobb is on the committee. She could not be here tonight because she's traveling. Ray Svedik, Hank Kelly, trustee George Radnovich. And then I also staff the committee along with Ann Simon, our administrator. There's a lot more information. I put the notes from our meetings up on the website. It's on our main page under Community, Citizens Advisory Committee. And so I post those notes if you're ever interested, if you need some bedtime reading. So the main part of our existing, oh, Ann, you found it. The existing conditions analysis. This is where I wanted there to be pictures. Thank you so much. So we broke it down. I leaned a little bit on the Council of Governments to do some of this lot acreage research for us. Thank you so much to them. They've been very helpful. They looked at lots, so parcels of land by character area and by zone of 3 acres or more, just so we could have a starting point for something that might be in the ballpark of one of these developments to get a sense of different acreages in the village. So broad strokes look. What we found was that in the Rio Grande South character area, in terms of character areas, there were way more of these lots that were 3 acres or more. They are grouped a little bit over there on the west and south side of the village. And then it went down from there a little bit, 4th Street, Guadalupe Trail, followed by the North Rio Grande character area. And then when we looked at lots by zone, we found that the bulk of them, 66 were approximately 66 in the A1 zone, and then down to 41 in the A3 zone, and then very much down from there. If you're really good at math, you'll notice that these are 2 lots off. I don't know why, but just know that it's a general overview and it's pretty close. Next slide, please. So again, this is a 10,000-foot view. There are some caveats with the analysis that was done because it's very broad strokes. There's always a potential for lot consolidation. So this is just parcels as they exist today, just to give you an idea of it. And this lots by acreage map is the one that's on your table. This is just the size of different parcels of land in the village. And again, take it with half a grain of salt, but it's fairly spot on. Other things, properties with existing buildings may redevelop or not. So a parcel with an existing home on it could in the future apply for this conservation subdivision and re-subdivide. They could demolish the house. It's probably not going to happen by a landslide of a bajillion applications. These are still marketable properties, but that could happen as well. So keep that in mind. And then just the disclaimer that this map is not showing available or developable properties. So it's just lots by acreage only. Not everything is available for development or redevelopment. Okay, next slide. So this brings us to our table discussions. Does every table have a CAC member at it? Raise your hand if you are a CAC member at a table. So that's pretty good. One of our Citizen Advisory Committee meeting folks. That's okay, that's okay. Feel free, if you do have one of these folks at your table, to lean on them for a little facilitation or advice or input. We have big pieces of paper that you will see with markers. We would love to hear your thoughts. So as a group, if someone could take some notes, doesn't have to be this person, the Citizens Advisory Committee person, but if you could designate a note taker, that would be great. And if you are alone at a table, find a friend. Find another table. And, or redistribute. If you want more elbow room, come to this table. Find a happy medium. Okay, so before I set you loose, let's talk about topic 1. I broke this into 3 topics. Okay, topic 1. So we're talking about eligibility. What would make a property eligible to apply for a conservation subdivision? One thing I really want to point out is that if you, we are not saying, yes, you can subdivide, or no, you can't subdivide at all. This is for private properties who they have the right to apply for a subdivision. How do we want to see it, and which types of properties? Sorry? You do want to see it urban. Are you being facetious? Well, this is a way to preserve and develop as well. And we want that input on the paper. So there's some paper right over there. Okay, so for the first topic, what would you like? Let's do one at a time because we might, yeah. Okay, so for topic 1, question 1, are conservation subdivisions appropriate in the village of Los Ranchos at all? That's fine. Village-wide, if they meet certain criteria, only in specific character areas, only in specific zones, for parcels of a certain acreage or more, or some combination. So I'm going to let you loose for a few minutes and chat about it. Please take notes and discuss at your tables, and we'll do little report backs after. Thanks.
People have rights. So, this is not politics. This is about private property.
Until 35. So let's do report backs at 25 maybe. I want to give them time to talk, but I also need to hear their thoughts when I take a moment. Yeah, 25. Because then we'll stop at 35. 10 minutes with 8 tables, really quick. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I mean, so if you have a large lot, and so first we brought the minimum of 3 acres. That's up to discussion. So let's say you have 9 acres. So let's say you have potential to put 9 homes on there. I know. So conservation, you can limit it to 9 homes. Now they're all. So we have to be fair to the property. Yeah, we can't tell somebody.
Yeah, we waited for weeks.
So what we're trying to do is give, come up with options.
Yeah, he just got, we're thinking of it. So, he is. You'll have to work out his So, I said, it's been clear, and we know we'll make her lost that.
So, I mean, so you heard that 50% is probably a good number. So if you have 10 acres, you have 5 acres. And remaining 5 acres has to be equivalent. I think that sounds fair. Now, what we might disagree is to give them bonus. Oh, they developed but you can say no to the house. That doesn't mean no. So keep in mind, if you have 10 acres, and you said this is going to be 70%, then they can say, forget that, I'll do 20. Yes. Oh, yes, correct. So there's got to be a that's right. It can't be a so that's just a slide.
My opinion is 50%. But that seems something doable. Developer, unless, they can I've been told that 50% is good. Open space on my property. 96%. Now, will somebody else agree to that? We want to hear from everybody beyond that. So you're not gonna walk away from the tax rate, covers that. We live in a world
Okay, so you have about 5 more minutes on this topic. 5 more minutes, just as a warning. Put those thoughts down on paper.
We missed one. There is one out there. That's the only. We missed the last
Two more minutes. 2 more minutes. And then we'll do little report backs. Okay, guys, all attention over here. Let's do little report backs. Have you nominated the lucky person at your table to represent the group? Okay, this table has been brave enough to say they want to go first. Shh.
Who is? All right.
Okay, we're going to do about 1 minute report backs just through the notes.
A quickie, Harvey White here. We're the get-along table. So the first topic is eligibility, and I would suspect that most tables will agree with this. We went with a 3-acre minimum, village-wide, all zones, and all character areas. So we didn't really want to get into some discrimination. We did feel that likely the zones that are already in ag areas might lend themselves more to this, be more successful, because the open space has to be managed, and that's not easy. You know, there's a lot to that. But nevertheless, our conclusion was no limits, you might say, except looking at that 3-acre number for a minimum. And there are reasons for that. One of the individuals at our table is a developer and looks at the cost of doing things and so forth and so on. If it gets too small, it's difficult. Thank you.
That was incredibly succinct. Thank you so much. Okay, our next table, let's just go around the room this way.
I think we echo many of the comments that were just made. I'm just going to go quickly through. We should have a conservation ordinance. We need an agricultural ordinance as well. From my side, I think we need to make sure we clarify the use of terminology, because we're throwing around A1, all this stuff. Most people in the village don't understand what we're talking about. If we want people's engagement, we should figure out a way to get that clarity for them. What should the ordinance do? Maintain the character, maintain the open space, support the agricultural economy, preserve the habitat for wildlife. What types of guardrails can be considered for this? Should it be specific areas across the village? I think we all agreed that it should be across the village. And then we talked about parcel size. We did talk 3 to 5, but then we discussed a little bit clearer, and I think John said that about why 2 might be the preferred, but I'm not going to try to say what he said because he's done his homework. Do you want to say it quickly?
If you look at the map, 2 acres is a rare bird to start with. And at the end of the day, give yourself an opportunity. You know, there's a lot of micro farming, there's a lot of agricultural elements. The reason if 2 homes are really close together, then you have some usable functional space. And if you go with standard setback requirements, you don't have that. And I think 3, there's just too few. You won't feel the impact. There's way more to be gained by setting it at a limit of 2 acres.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to the next table. And if you can navigate, or yeah, wherever you want to go.
All right. Well, we got into a long discussion about whether we should even be doing this in the first place, conservation development project, which took up a lot of our time. And then we finally got around to thinking about answering the questions. But, you know, what people would like is for the village to just buy up all the open space, but that's just not possible. You know, we're buying as much as we can, but we don't have unlimited funds. So, and then, you know, there was a discussion about the one project that we do have, and we all admit that we missed the mark, and that's why we're doing what we're doing here today. So I don't know if I got a good consensus on everyone, but in terms of minimum lot size, 3 acres was thrown out, and in terms of open space to leave open, 50% was the number that people seem to feel like that was okay.
Thank you. And I heard, you know, 50%, 3 acres, and also hard pass, right? For the record. Okay. Oh, I heard some head shaking. Is that correct? Oh, it's a no for conservation ordinance, or? I don't want to dig it back up. I'm so sorry. We'll move on for now. I'll come back.
Okay. We had 1 vote for no conservation ordinances. So we had a vote for none of the above. The others all agreed that the alternative is to get a lot more McMansions on 1 acre lots, and that was something we didn't want. There's a question about what is open space, and that's something that we need to look at, because open space could be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There's some of us who really want to see open space be habitat for wildlife or agriculture, but there are other uses as well. So we want to be careful about that. We have an issue with homeowners associations controlling the open space. Anybody who watches John Oliver recently saw an expose on HOAs. Well, homeowners associations are groups that are not responsible to anyone, who have complete authority over that space. And so if we allow the homeowners associations to control the open space, then we will have zero recourse if they decide to do something we don't like there. So that's a significant potential problem. Let's see. And we all feel we have to give something to the developer as a motivation to do a conservation development. And what does that mean? One wants all over visit.
One person wanted to have conservation development throughout the village, and 3 at the table only wanted to see it, don't want to see it all over the village, just in specific areas.
And we had a, is that, and we also had a,
Yeah, I think we wanted it all over, and we don't want this Guadalupe Trail.
yeah. So we agree with the first table that said we don't want to discriminate against residents of one area of the village over another in terms of determining where one of these conservation developments could go. So other than that, The question was about eligibility, and we didn't answer that.
I think you talked a lot about good stuff, thanks. And the next question is going to be on open space. Oops, sorry. Okay, on to the next table. Here, quiet.
So our response is yes, conservation easements are appropriate for the village. They should be village-wide. The open space should have the values of the goals of the master plan of serving a purpose. We did talk about 3 acres or more to have mandatory conservation space. But it could be permissive on smaller lots. And that way, those that are smaller, such as one of the examples was the tripas that we have, because they may be uniquely designed and may not have the full 3 acres, could still take advantage of conservation because we do have a lot of those elongated parcels.
Great, thank you so much. The designated person. You can team up.
So we said that we wanted village-wide, that it would apply everywhere, and that we wanted that it would be discussed for all acreage, so that you wouldn't have, probably people wouldn't want to develop on 1 acre something, but they might. So that should be discussed if they do. If they want to put an apartment house on half an acre and then put half an acre, that should be something that should be discussed. It shouldn't be just automatic that under 3 acres you can do whatever you want. And because people are going to do the worst possible thing that they can do, right? So we have to make rules that are very specific. And that's all. We didn't actually get any. Oh, we're only doing 1 at a time. So that was, do you all agree with that? Oh, and the other thing, Betty pointed out that, for instance, and this is very subtle and needs to be discussed maybe in a different time, is what is recreational? We're not there yet. Okay, we're just doing that. Okay, all right, we just got off topic. All right.
Thank you very much. Okay, our final table. Winner goes to you.
And most of what's been discussed is what we discussed at this table as well. We spent a lot of time talking about why are we only talking about development? And I understand we don't have money to buy all those parcels, but that should be a continuing part of our conversation, that there's an active structure to look at where the parcels are that are open and for sale, and which ones make sense to purchase at the time they're available, and then look for money to be able to do that. We're just giving it all up right now, with the focus being on just development and how that looks, because we're missing what the majority of us keep coming to these meetings for. That's the character of Los Ranchos. And so we need to be sure that we're including that within every single discussion and action by planning and zoning and the Board of Trustees, not just write it off because it's too expensive. We also need to be talking about, well, what kinds of housing do we want to include within cluster housing, or whatever terminology we want to speak about? Apartments, more of them? I think 4th and Osuna is enough. I don't want a whole bunch more of those. So we talked about the eligibility, but the bulk of our conversation is to really consider the character of the village and the rural nature and how do we maintain that instead of just developing it all.
Thank you very much. And we hear that loud and clear. While tonight's discussion is focused on development, because that's kind of my neck of the woods in planning and zoning, I assure you that's not the only conversation. Okay, so Sandy, could you go to the next slide?
I will make it a tip.
We're gonna do topic 2. All right, topic 2, already being requested by popular demand, open space. So, did I lose my, yep, it's right in my hand. Okay. So, topic 2, really quick, 2 questions. 1, what uses are appropriate for conserved open space? So, yes, drill down into, are recreational activities appropriate? What would those look like? If so, habitat only, etc. Question 3, where is appropriate for the conserved open space to go? Does it need to be public facing to preserve views for the rest of the village? Is there a scenario where you are preserving something very important on that property, such as something that is adjacent to the bosque or another natural feature that needs to be preserved but might not be publicly viewable? Okay, have at it.
Then you have to be specific by
the open space seems to be we're trying to get these I'm agreeing with you. We're outside. So what
Conversations going on.
Roped in. Report back at 50. All right, we're about to do a little report back, so make sure you have some notes written down. We're wrapping up in like 30 seconds. Okay, choose your reporter, and we're going to go around the room. Who is the most ready? It is Ann. All right, let's all listen up. We're doing the report backs. Again, real brief, because we want to get to the really fun part, the density.
Okay, so what's the name? Our table was get along until we got to this. Now, we two areas. One is uses, one is where, and I'm waiting for everybody to be quiet. Oh, Sorry. Regarding uses, we kind of had covered a number of potentials. In general, though, we felt that the best uses were those that preserved habitat and preserved some degree of undeveloped character. We included such things as equestrian areas, farming, forests, trails, gardens, other habitats, and I apologize, I'm a doctor, so I give the leg. We did cover some others, open space uses that might be interesting in zones that aren't so agricultural. We talked about playgrounds, recreation, baseball, pickleball, tennis, basketball, but we felt that those were not so undeveloped, and we put those in parentheses. Where we felt that the open space should optimally be visibly appreciated by the community, but only if feasible, and we sought the preservation that was in domains that preserved ecology. So I'll put that down. So anyway, we had some ideas, but we leaned towards more undeveloped areas, open space based, and preservation of ecology and visibility.
Thank you.
Me again. That was very good. Thank you. We'll take that. No, I'm kidding. Then I have to do what they said over there. Well, we had a couple of examples. One was Los Terrones. Most of us know over there and how it was built out, stays in the character of the village, makes use of open space. And that's one of the thoughts that people had. We talked about location. Water rights may be a consideration of where those are. Easements, they have to be preserved to be able to keep things open. If it's 3 acres, how might that look while you're incorporating open space? And then we talked about there being an overlay to all of this to preserve the character while considering wildlife, water conservation, and what is that balance going to look like? And I think it goes to some of the points you were making. Maintaining, if possible, that character and that sustainability while giving the developers room to do what developers do. We'll just slap them around a little bit if they go outside those lines, but that's okay. That was pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go this way because you're more accessible to me. Who is the...
Okay, well, we had consensus on some topics. What uses are appropriate for conserved open space? We all agreed that agriculture and habitat were number one. Recreational, we struggled as to what that really meant. And, then it got into a conversation about, should people be able to walk through it and things like that. Or yeah, it should be like a park maybe. But we all agree that it should be visible. And we had a discussion about, too bad we didn't think to do this like 30 years ago when there was lots of open space, right? And are we already so developed that we're not taking advantage of many remaining parcels that are open? And that's true, but nevertheless, we should do something about what we have. Let's see. Anything else? We talked about, oh yeah, one more thing. On Rio Grande Boulevard, we thought the open space might look different in the sense that it's already open by the street, right? And other places, the character area is where, like Guadalupe Trail, more homes are towards the street, and the open space is in the back. And so, we might think about that, and that we don't necessarily need to force one situation or another.
Thank you.
Okay, so in answer to, this time we actually answered the questions. The open space component, so we had an interesting idea, which is the open space should be agricultural or habitat, or if not one of those two, if not guaranteed to be one of those two, then it should be owned by the village. So the developer can can guarantee that it'll be agricultural habitat, or give ownership of that plot of land to the village and let the village deal with it. Well, okay, that wasn't a popular idea. We had, okay, so it was suggested we might want to develop a nuisance ordinance to help manage these open spaces. So if somebody is doing something on the open space, parking a bunch of old trailers or something like that, there we have some way of dealing with that. Or letting everything die is the other thing. These places do need to be maintained. The open spaces should have no parking, no roads, and no playgrounds. And so on question 2, where is it appropriate? We thought it would make sense in terms of whether the open space is public facing or not, should be worked out on a property by property basis. Because different properties will, you don't want to force everything to one or the other. So we thought that maybe we could trust people. Like what? We also want to consider the concerns of adjacent residents in making that decision. We said there should be no barriers. We don't like walls and such. So we'd like to have no barriers. We'd like the open space accessible to members of the public. And we would also like, as much as possible, to preserve views. So some places have spectacular views, some less so, but we should try to preserve all of the views, not just the best.
Thank you. If you could pass it actually to that table. Thanks.
So we echo a lot of the same sentiments. We think that the minimum should be at least 50% of gross, not net. The property needs to meet either agricultural, habitat, cultural, recreational, or views. It needs to satisfy one of those requirements, I guess, and it should be consistent with the character district that it's in as well. And it should meet unique requirements of the character district. For instance, we were kind of talking about 4th Street. We don't need like 4 or 5 parks all along 4th Street if it doesn't make sense. It should be spread out through the village and make sense based on what is needed in those areas of the village. Whatever is dedicated as open space must be enforceable by village code enforcement. So in the bylaws, if it's an HOA or it doesn't belong to the village, it should have codes that are enforced by the village and should have those. So, they can't just let it die or do something extreme to it. And then the property, again, should it be street facing? Should it be public facing? We agree with the table next to us. It should be appropriate for the location of the open space.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We may be a bit confused at this table, but our question was, are we dealing with open space or a conservation easement sort of situation? And what we were told was that we are not dealing with open space tonight.
Public open space.
Yes, public open space. And it seems like a lot of the comments are geared towards a public open space. These parcels of land don't necessarily have to be public. They could be, or they may not. But basically, we agreed that the land should be undeveloped and used for habitat, like the first table did, and publicly visible. And we think that we ought to take into consideration that there are more purposes for leaving open land in a village or a city
than just visual aspects. One part of this we need to consider is that by leaving it more open is that we'll have more drainage and seepage into the aquifer and things like that. So anyway, I think we need to make a distinction between village purchased public open space and these properties that we're talking about tonight.
Thank you. All right, one more table with feeling. Here we go.
Feeling. One of the main questions we asked was, would the public have access to the open space if the developers take over this process? We have some questions about recreation, thinking that maybe it's too broad. Would it be paved? Would there be ordinances in place so that it would protect the open space, rural agricultural concept? Question was raised, if we're looking at having open space for habitat, how can that be a viable habitat on a 3-acre lot? At 50%, that would only be 1.5 acres. And so I'm not sure that that really would address that issue.
We have a 1-acre park at Edgewood Road, and we have geese, we have egrets. We have a 1-acre park at Edgewood and Osuna, and right now it's often populated with geese, egrets. When they flood it for irrigation, the egrets come in. You can have a very small piece of land and have wild things attracted to it. I mean, any little bit of open space to me is
preferable.
Yeah, because right now they're going to make half that park into a playground, but right now it's used by wildlife. So it'll be a half acre later, but an acre or even a half acre hopefully would be plenty.
Well, if we're looking for open space and trying to encourage agriculture, if we have parcels of land that are left open, why not expand the concept that's currently in place at the agricultural center where we have contracted farmers? We have a lot, I understand that there's a lot of demand for people who want to farm the open space for agricultural purposes. So maybe that would be a concept we could consider. And finally, on question 3, we were looking at advancing the creative subdivision design. It's question 3 within the topic. I mean, we had that same discussion at our table. Well, what are we talking about? But we're talking about the actual, where is it appropriate? Let me read it. Where is it appropriate to advance creative subdivision design? And if we're considering that to be the equivalent to maybe what you have at the Guadalupe Prado, what is the name of that? Thank you. The Bosque del Prado subdivision along Guadalupe Trail, they have the open space woven in and out. And that's a pretty effective design. So that was something that we might, that one, Los Prados de Guadalupe. Okay, that's it.
Thank you all very much. I don't think there's quite a lot of time because this is going to take up the rest of it. If you have 15 seconds to do it, go for it.
The city of Albuquerque should be paying us for our open space that we flood irrigate, because if we didn't, they wouldn't have an aquifer. And same with the Balloon Festival.
Very succinct, thank you. Okay, so we are moving on to the one that you guys have been waiting to talk about, density. So, Sandy, if you could go to the last slide, so you guys don't have to read, you can just look at pictures. This is not all of the options for how you can do this whatsoever. I wanted to give you my extremely advanced artistic representation of some options of ways to do this. So The first one, you'll see the little road is what's on the left, going up and down. This is hypothetically 1 acre per lot zoning. So 5 acres, 5 lots, typical subdivision currently. Do I design subdivisions for work? No, don't judge me. Okay, so option A, again, the same parcel. We're going to, just for the sake of throwing something up there, put 50% open space. And then you'll see a little road easement on the bottom, not to scale. This could be gross 50%. Oh, I got angry. Stand by. But then you cluster these houses, and what I've done in hash mark around it is kind of the way we have it currently in our ordinance, where you do have to meet the setbacks for that zone externally, so it kind of buffers the property a little bit, and then you cluster within. Okay, so option B. So that is the same amount of homes that you would get, but clustered. Option B, you get a very small density bump that's potentially more character area appropriate. This would be 50% conservation, same number of main units and lots, but by right, perhaps you could get a 750 square foot casita. Something small, not a garage, but by right to give a little bit of allowance for that development standard, just an idea. Option C, this is where it mirrors something that we do have in our current ordinance, where if you provide more conserved open space, you get more floor area ratio, so you can build more square footage. So in this one, I've made the houses a little bigger, and more lots as well. D is another way to slice this. It's not more far or more preserved open space, but it's splitting up the floor area ratio, which is one of the options that you can do now under the current ordinance. It doesn't say you can only have 5 lots, 5 homes. It says you can't build a bigger footprint, but you can move it around. There could be more homes, for example, more properties. There are externalities to all of these things. So a couple things to keep in mind. When you build smaller, you could provide more attainable units, so smaller square footage units. You may also increase traffic to that site by a little bit because there will be more people living there, right? So keep in mind the goals of what you want to accomplish in this conversation, and chat about some density real quick. This will be our last question of the night. I'm sure we could fill 3 hours with this, so good luck. Okay, just a couple more minutes on this one. I'll try to stretch it out for you guys a little bit. Wrap it up. One more minute and then we'll wrap up. All right, guys, we're doing it. We are doing one final wrap up. I know we could talk about this forever, but we're not going to. So, put your final thought down and we'll do quick report backs. All right, guys, our first table is going to do a report back. Bear with us. Please make sure you're listening. Who's got a good whistle? Ann.
Okay, doke. I would admit that we're struggling over here. We've all of a sudden become urban planners. What we did is we looked at a percentage open space and the number of lots by size of development. And we haven't finished it. But let's say it was 2 to 3 acres, 3 to 5 acres, 5+ acres. It appears that the open space percentage could grow depending on the lots, depending on the total development size. So it went 25, 30, 35. But as we did that, we also recognized that some of the residual amount of space that's going to have houses could require quite a few houses. Numbers like 15, 18, 12, you know, and this, to make it work from a developer or a builder's perspective. So if you throw out words like 50%, it does not leave a lot of land for a developer to recoup the investment without excessive density. So we didn't get to a final number, but that's just a thinking and reality that we all have to deal with.
Okay, we're all sharing one microphone here. Next table. If you could pass it to the trustee.
Okay. Is this working? Yeah. All right, my turn. You'll be happy to know that we evolved from saying we don't want, not everybody saying this, but we don't want any conservation development project to, we want it to be mandatory now. So yeah, you'll be happy to know that. And you know, there's people want things to be flexible, of course, and they want it to be simple. And it's hard to make simple, but it's nice when you can do that. And so then the conversation was about the bonus, and you know, we had all pretty much agreed to 50% open space was about the right number. And should there be a bonus if they gave up 60%? And I think people agreed, yes, there should be a bonus. What that multiplier is, we don't know yet. I don't think it needs to be overly generous, but there's even people that think that even at 50%, there should be some bonus. But you know, I'll just leave it at that. You know, it doesn't have to be a big number. It could be 1.1. JT wants to add something.
Thank you.
Okay, succinct. Oh yeah, we've got 8 minutes. We said external setbacks are on the property we're gonna hang on to. The current floor area ratio way of doing things we don't like. And the cluster development. The 50% open space minimum we all agreed to. We suggested, well, maybe the bonus should be if they give us 50%, they get 50% more houses. But I think what Gil said is true too. It doesn't have to be a 1-to-1. You know, that ratio needs to be worked. Casitas, we like casitas, and we think that could be a reward. Although there could be issues there, and that complicates things, and it's not going to be, wouldn't be that easy to create that situation. Anyway, and then of course overriding everything is concern for residents. Adjacent residents, the ones next door. Yeah, the ones living there we don't care about.
Okay, I know, I'm like, okay, so we are in agreement that the applicable zoning or what is currently zoned for whatever property will still be maintained. So if it's 1 acre properties, those 1 acres will still be maintained with a minimum of 50% given up. And then I'm just going to use examples because I speak better in examples. So if it's 5 acre property and 2.5 acres are given up, 2.5 acres are remaining with the 5 houses that would be allowed on the remaining property to maintain the same zoning, they would be allowed to use the FAR calculation based on that remaining lot size. And the goal is that the developer would be creative in those lot sizes, so they're not all half-acre properties remaining. Maybe you have a half acre, maybe you have a 1/4 acre, maybe you have, you know, and so it doesn't look so just, you know, right. So cookie cutter, doesn't look like Rio Rancho. And so we're fine with casitas. And of course, using that in the FAR calculation for the remaining lots that after the 50%. But we've just got to make sure that we're very careful that enforcement is used, that casitas don't become Airbnbs, don't become rental properties, don't get abused. And so when we looked at C and D of using just FAR, absent of using current zoning, I think most of the table was not for that. I think that's why we said let's blend the FAR and current zoning. And then again, being creative with lot sizes so everything doesn't look so cookie cutter.
Thank you so much. Okay. No pressure.
There we go. We kind of went by choosing these A, B, or C, or D, and we all agreed that we thought A or B would work, that we agreed on the 50% open space, and then we discussed C and thought that we would be in favor of C also, depending on how the setbacks, they would have to comply to the current setbacks, which it looks like from this drawing, this particular one wouldn't, but they would have to do that. And we didn't like D at all, and so we didn't want to deal with just the FAR, and that's it.
Thank you. I'm not hurt at all. You didn't like one of my drawings. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. We're concerned about the casita concept. It goes to the Airbnb or enforcement. We're already experiencing trouble with that based on some of the meetings that I've attended. So enforcement seems to be an issue because there's confusion about the ordinances. So the Airbnb is concerned. It also, if you have casitas, increases the density, the traffic, the parking, which are also concerns. And I'm going to turn this one over to it's regarding the floor area ratio.
Well, we had questions about the floor area ratio, especially when you look at, for example, C. Does that include covered open kitchens? Does that include spaces that aren't enclosed areas? Because that's one of the big concepts these days, according to Casa Magazine, that that everybody wants a portal and an outdoor kitchen.
So things that off the top of my head go toward the FAR, garages, because those could be converted into living spaces. I don't believe covered porches go toward the FAR. So those are still developed, but they are not enclosed and don't count towards the FAR typically. Any last? Yes, it is. And I'm so excited to see all of these great ideas. Anything else from this table? You guys good? Okay, thank you so much. And did you guys already go?
I think they put us last because you're too noisy. Anyway. We really only had two. I'm going to start with the second one and then let John go with the follow-up to the first one. But it says basically the same density as the underlying zone gives the developer some discretion. So, I mean, that's kind of the broad picture of where this one was. But overall, we don't need no stinking density bonuses notices.
You watch Blazing Saddles. That was really good. So we talk about the bonus. So Urban Land Magazine, which is about urban development, they did a study in conjunction with Colorado State. The bonuses in the profit, one, your development costs drastically drop in many cases, but the overall sales value goes up by 20 to 30%, as noted in Colorado. The bonus is in the fact that people want to live near open space. We are the only agricultural greenbelt open space in the Rio Grande Valley with any degree of protection until you get to Bosque Farms or Peralta. We have 10% of the total area, but all the arable land. Everything else is sand on the mesa. and we have finite resources here. People want them. You don't need to give somebody a bunch of extra houses to build. The bonus is in the fact that people are going to fight over it and they'll pay more for it, as evidenced by Colorado State University's study with Urban Land Magazine. Hold on.
And the committee did interview a developer who's been pretty affluent in developing in Village of Los Ranchos, and that was their exact statement. And George, I think you can probably attest to this, that keeping the same density and having the open space made the development more attractable to the buyers that they are wanting to attract. And that is a statement from a developer.
Okay, we may have lost the live stream since we are barely over our 2 hours. So if they're still out there, thank you for tuning in. If not, thank you all so much for all of your thoughts. As you dream about this tonight and further develop these ideas, please feel free to draw them out, write them down, and send them my way. You can give them to me in person. You can email them to me. My email is very available everywhere, but it is mrubin@losranchosnm.gov. I will give it to you if you don't have it. If you have random questions, please call me. And next steps before I let you go. So this committee will continue to meet every 2 weeks for a little bit. We hope to do another one of these public meetings once we have more to show you back from what we heard. And then you can weigh in on how we integrated all of this feedback and do our best. Yes? Thank you. So, last thought. All of our committee meetings are publicly attendable if you would like. Wednesday mornings, are we doing 9? I don't remember anymore, 9 o'clock. But they are posted on our website, on the project page. If you want to read notes from what we've been discussing, if you have any input, you can write it into me and we'll send it to everybody. So many options. Please stay in touch. And thank you so much for attending tonight. Have a great night.
This is so legit.
You got it.